Hello and welcome everyone to this AE Tuts Plus tutorial. I'm Ezra Istiroti. I'm a motion designer and this is my very first tutorial. In this episode I'll be showing you how to create this effect. As you can see, it's an organic morphing blob transition. I'll explain to you which kind of footage works best for this and how we can achieve it. So let's jump right into After Effects and take a look. If you have the project file, then you'll notice that we have everything that we need in here. I've already imported everything. So let's take a look at the footage and let me explain you what we did in order to achieve this. In this case, you can see it's a violin. We had to paint it white and shot it only with one light pointing at it onto a black background. And this setting was the best setting that we found to work for this effect. We did a lot of test shootings and this was what we needed to achieve the effect. Also, we have a saxophone that you can see we also had to paint it somehow just to avoid any reflections of the material as much as possible. And finally, I'm gonna show you how to do the same effect with the dancer. This will be a little bit trickier because of the keying process, but that I'll explain to you a little bit later on. Let's get started and let's first drag the saxophone into a create new composition icon, which will create a composition the same size and length as the footage. Now the effects we're gonna be using are two of the built-in effects in After Effects, but this next step it's probably the most important one to remember, and it's that we have to apply the effects onto an adjustment layer, and we create one by going to Layer, New, Adjustment Layer, and it's here that we're gonna be applying the effects, and I'll explain to you why. So let's start with the first one. We go to Effects, Blur and Sharpen, Fast Blur. Let me just put things in order here. We have to repeat edge pixels, and let's duplicate this instance of the effect. And then we're gonna go to Effects, Stylize, CC Threshold. You can use the regular threshold, which is down here, but I feel I have more control in the settings with a CC threshold. And right away you'll see that we have this high contrast look, and this is partly what we want to do. Now let's move the second instance of the fast blur to the bottom of the stack, and we're gonna play with the threshold effect a little bit. Now for every piece of footage it's gonna be a different settings, so you have to play with your own footage and see what looks best for you. Now the second instance of the fast blur, it's just to keep things smoother, so we're gonna put a value between 1 and 2 pixels. Again, depends on the footage. And as you can see, we have this nice high contrast effect, and the reason we applied it to the adjustment layer, let's say if you want to or need to scale up the footage, it doesn't matter how much you scale it up, you will still get the same smooth lines effect from the threshold, and we're over a 500% of scale. If we were to apply it to the to the footage itself, we would see the actual pixels of the footage. Let me undo this. And now for the fun part, we're gonna animate the blurriness. So let's go to about a second and a half, and let's crank the blurriness up. And right away, you'll see that the shape of the saxophone is lost, and we get this organic moving white blob. So we're gonna set a keyframe on the blurriness position, and we're gonna hit U to reveal the keyframes in the timeline. Let's go to about 3 seconds and bring the blurriness down. So we're gonna get this morphing transition from the white spot, to a saxophone. Then we're gonna copy this keyframe by hitting Command C or Control C and pasting it on the playhead by hitting Control V or Command V. So this way we won't have any effect on the blurriness property. And then we're just gonna again increase it all the way up. Now I usually like to easy ease the keyframes, and there are two ways to do this. Let me bring this blurriness down back a little bit. There are two ways to do this. One, it's if you hit F9 on the keyboard, you'll see that the keyframe gets easy ease in and out of the keyframe. If you right click on the keyframe, you can go to Keyframe Assistant and choose any of the easy ease options. Or if you go to the keyframe velocity, which can also be accessed by holding down the Alt key on a PC or the Option key on a Mac and double clicking the keyframe. This will bring the keyframe velocity window, which is a more precise way to control the speed of the easing process if you need that much precision in your project. Right now, as we're doing with organic fillings, we're just gonna easy ease without much of change. So basically this is the first part of the process, and as you can see, let's do a preview real fast, and we see this organic, sort of like an ink blob, morphing into the saxophone and then going back into something without a defined shape. So now let's do the same thing with the violin. Let's bring the violin down to the create new composition icon, and let's repeat the whole process. Let's create a new layer, a new adjustment layer, and we're gonna apply the same effects, fast blur and CC threshold. And again, let's duplicate the first instance of the fast blur by either hitting Control or Command D on the keyboard, or going to Edit, Duplicate. Let's bring this down to the bottom of the stack. We're going to enable repeat edge pixels and just apply a 1 pixel value. Also on the first instance of the fast blur, we're going to repeat edge pixels. And we need to find a spot on the footage where we can play with the threshold effect until we find something that we like. Now again, we're gonna animate the blurriness position by clicking on the stopwatch and hitting U to reveal the keyframes. Let's crank this up. So you'll see we have this morphing Let's bring the blurriness down. Now it's morphing, sorry, again to the violin. Let's copy this keyframe and paste it onto the playhead. And again, we're going to increase the blurriness all the way up. And as you can see, in this case, the violin just faded out of screen. So we can actually select the footage and trim it. We can do this by either hitting, sorry about that, the Alt key and close bracket, or Option key on a Mac and close bracket with the footage selected. And this way it will only fade and won't come back again. Now let's keep this a little bit organized. Let's create a new composition by going to Composition, New Composition. I'm working at 1280 by 720 at 24 frames, and 20 seconds is okay. So let's rename this composition Main Comp, and we're gonna bring both compositions into the timeline. Now you can see we only see one of the footage, one of the layers at a time. So in order to fix this, we're gonna change the transfer mode from the top layer from normal to screen. And now we can see both of them at the same time. Now the way I did this, the whole timing and keyframing process, which in this case it's probably the tedious part and the more complex part of this effect. It's getting everything right on the timing. And the way I did this, let me show you. I didn't want to be jumping from one composition in one window to the next one. So I locked this viewer window, created a new one. Let's move this to the side. Let's make some room here. And let's bring one timeline to the bottom. So now you have two comp viewers and two timelines. In this case, the left one is your main composition, and the right one, it's going to be either the violin or the saxophone, depending on which one you select. So in this case, let's bring the saxophone back. No, let's do it this way. It's going to be easier. Let's start with the violin, and you can see the actual violin in relationship with your main composition. So we're gonna play with the settings, and as you can see, we start seeing the saxophone, but it's not moving. So we're just gonna increase the blurriness until the whole saxophone is gone, so it will grow up from nothing. And we can bring this in, and as you can see, now let's play with the position property of the saxophone. So we're gonna set a keyframe on the position. Let's move it a little bit to the right and bottom side. Let's easy use both keyframes again. And there you go. Now let me bring everything as it was before. Let's do a quick RAM preview just of the transition, and I'm gonna set the resolution down to 1/3 so we can see it better. Let me bring the preview window. So there you go. That it's the first part of the transition. As you can see, it's a rather easy process, just remembering the order of the effects and be applied. They have to be applied on an adjustment layer. And now, as I told you, we're going to do it with a green screen footage, which is, it has a little bit of a trick. So let's bring down the dancer to the create new composition window, and we'll do a quick and dirty keying process here with key light. I already did this so I know the exact values. And now if we use the same technique, let's create a new adjustment layer and apply again the fast blur, the CC threshold effect, and let's duplicate the fast blur. We're going to enable repeat edge pixels on both of them. Now let's play with the threshold. Now a nice thing about the threshold effect, let's say if you want to invert it, we're going to get a white dancer onto a black background. Now the problem here is the first instance of the fast blur. If we increase it, we're going to get these soft blurry edges, which we don't want to because this won't work as good as the other footage. So the way to go around this, we're going to create a new solid by going to Layer, New Solid. We're going to make it black, make sure it's comp size, and we're going to bring it to the bottom of the stack. Now as you remember, we did a black solid, but the threshold effect, it's inverting the colors. So we actually need to make it white in this case. And now we have a white dancer onto a black background. Then we have to pre-compose these two layers, so we have to select them by going to Layer, Pre-compose. We're going to move all attributes into the new composition. Let's just rename it. And now if we play with the blurriness, we get the effect that we want. So let's go ahead and animate this rather quickly, the blurriness property. And we're going to bring the dancer again to the main composition. Change its transfer mode to screen so we can see it. Now what we're going to do is just, let me do again the same two timeline techniques. Okay, now I speed up the process so you won't have to wait for me to keyframe everything. And as you can see, we go from the violin onto the saxophone and then to the dancer. And as you can see, it's a very organic moving transition. But if you remember on the clip, sorry about this, we have these textures both on the front and the back of the footage. So let's go and do that right away. And that is one of the beauty things of working with high contrast and black and white footage. And probably some of you have already guessed it. We're gonna pre-compose the footage. We actually can trim it down. Let's pre-compose by going to Layer, Pre-compose. We're gonna move all attributes, and let's say master pre-comp. We're gonna use this as a luma matte. Again, let's keep everything in order. Let's bring one of the textures that we have here. Let's bring this grunge gray, which is a concrete wall kind of texture. And we're gonna, just to give some randomness, we're gonna apply some keyframes to the position property. This way we'll have a very subtle, slow variation that won't distract the audience from the main interest. And then we're just gonna use a master pre-comp and set the track matte to luma matte. This way you have the white on the texture and the black, it's now empty. And let's bring in another texture to put to the background. So we're gonna bring another instance of the same pre-composition. Let's bring this green texture. Let's scale it up. And again, we're gonna play with the position property just to give some variation. And now we need to put it below the footage and set it to Luma Invert Matte. So right away you'll see, let's scale it up a little bit, you'll see that we have a texture for both the foreground and the background, and they're different. Let's bring this concrete texture a little bit down because it's too bright. So we're just going to use the curves effect. And also to the green background. You can actually use any background that you want. You can use any piece of footage, videos, any effect, something like the noise effect, any randomizer, pretty much anything that you want, as long a good rule of thumb would be not to have something distracting on the background so people can see the actual footage. And let's just create a new adjustment layer and we'll apply some curves to the whole thing just to unify everything. Let's apply again the fast blur effect by 1 or 2 pixels. Actually, in this case it was too much. Just to give a nice smooth look. And let's do another quick RAM preview. Well, there you go. This is the whole process. As you can see, it's not a very complicated on the After Effects side. It's more along the lines of pre-producing everything right and more of the timing and keyframing aspect of it. I hope you learned something new today. I'm Ezra Istiroti for AE Tuts Plus, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks everyone. Bye.